back because I think it snowed once and everyone forgot about it. So, okay, so today, in case you guys haven't figured it out, we're going to be talking about modding, hacking, and video games essentially. And these are all terms. These are all terms that are misused and like cross-used all the time. What's that? Yeah. Basically, a quick definition of each. Modding is just short term for modifying. If you take a video game console and you change the color of the light on it, technically you have modded that console. Hacking isn't anything that special. Hacking literally is just taking something apart to see how it works. So if you have a toaster and you open it up to figure out how it works, you just hack that toaster. Oh. Lots of times people use hacking to define malicious hacking, and that is what almost everything that we're talking about falls under, which is when you modify something, completely changing it, getting something free, because your understanding of the technology. There's a movie that came out called Hackers where they were like recording stuff into phones to get free phone calls and all sorts of stuff. Oh yes. Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay. And actually, I don't know why I'm here in my stupid little work uniform. I don't feel comfortable in that at all. And so like that's basically the definition, but what we're talking about covers all those things. Sure. That's hilarious. What we're going to be covering is all those things. Now, there has been modding and hacking of video games for as long as video games have been around, but the first big one that really got an insane amount of attention was a game called Pac-Man. We all know Pac-Man. Pac-Man is the most recognizable video game character according to this year's Guinness. Mario follows close second. But like Pac-Man, when it first came out, everyone loved it, but of course it only has one maze and the difficulty just speeds up, essentially. And so they made a bunch of hacks for it, and the first and most important hack is the one called the speed chip. This was a chip that you actually could put into the board itself, and it sped up the game. If you guys play a game called Miss Pac-Man Galaga, if you play the Pac-Man on that, it has a speed chip in it, or it's not actually the game, it's from the board, but it's meant to emulate the actual speed chip. But basically, Pac-Man moves faster, nobody else does. And so it makes the game easier, you can rack up more points, but since it moves faster, it's just more fun. And if you get used to playing on the speed chip, there's almost no going back to the original game because it just feels too slow. The next big modification of Pac-Man was a game called Clyde's Revenge. And this is one that's a lot harder to come across, but it was very important because it introduced the concept of playing as a villain. And basically, instead of controlling Pac-Man, you would control Clyde the ghost. And everyone knows Clyde is the stupid one. He's the orange one that like you'll be running right at him and he'll be coming at you, then he'll just turn around for no reason. That was Clyde, and so they give you control over the dumbest ghost so that, and basically the computer runs what Pac-Man would do. And it was a very easy hack to mess with, but it was also a pretty important hack, and later on they brought that concept into a GameCube game where basically you were Pac-Man and your 4 friends would play as the ghost to take you, and that's probably the earliest reference that they have for that game. Now, the most important hack of Pac-Man, however, was made by the General Gaming Corporation. They made a hack called Crazy Auto. Basically, in America, Bailey Midway had the rights to produce Pac-Man in arcade form because Namco couldn't like ship all that stuff over, so they told Bailey to make machines here in America and produce Pac-Man. Bailey gave a machine to General Gaming Corporation to kind of test and mess with, and they made the Crazy Auto hack. They made 4 new mazes. They changed all the ghosts' name. They made the fruit pieces not appear in one place, but kind of run around the maze. And most importantly, in the Crazy Auto hack, they changed Pac-Man into a woman. When Bailey Midway got a hold of this game, they were like, wow, this is really fun, changed the name to Miss Pac-Man and started to produce it all over the world. And Miss Pac-Man is originally a game that was made by basically a bunch of students who were just testing out their gaming knowledge. Now, Namco got a wind of this, because they weren't getting any money from Miss Pac-Man, and they weren't very happy about it. Yeah, absolutely. Because the thing is, Bailey had the right to produce cabinets. they did not have the right to produce the actual video games based off of Pac-Man. They did not have the right to the actual programming of the board. They could have the board, but they couldn't like make a new board or alter it. Midway quickly just was like, oh, here's Miss Pac-Man, you can have it, because they didn't want to lose that. But then shortly after, that's how Namco got a hold of it. But you notice in Namco collections, you don't see a lot of Pac-Man games that we learned to love. Well, the thing is, right after they did that, they came out with Junior Pac-Man, which was a Pac-Man that was like 3 screens wide. That was really fun. They came out with Baby Pac-Man. Bailey Midway is doing all this, not Namco. They came out with Baby Pac-Man, which was Pac-Man plus pinball, which I've never played, but I desperately wanted because it sounds super cool. They came out with Super Pac-Man, and they came out, I mean, they just one right after another. They were coming out with unlicensed games, and Namco pulled the plug on Bailey Midway, and that's essentially when it ended.
Angry.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the first time we see hacking turn into an actual legal issue. Because before, no one really cared because no one even knew it was happening. But everyone knows Ms. Pac-Man is more successful than the original Pac-Man. And so, of course, it was an issue to have that. Moving on down the road, we have Street Fighter. Street Fighter is undeniably the most influential fighting game. Pretty much every fighting game we play nowadays, except for maybe the Dragon Ball Tenkaichi Budokai ones or whatever, are based off of Street Fighter. And lots of people can argue against it, but the fact is Street Fighter came up with the formula of choose your character, you have the health bar, and you fight until the health bar is gone, and you have super moves. So most of our fighting games are based off of Street Fighter. Now, they came out with a version of Street Fighter called Street Fighter Rainbow Edition. Now, Rainbow Edition was a black market hack. You had to like know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody to get a hold of it, and it was a pricey hack to get, but it was also a very lucrative hack to get that people would start putting in their machine. Now, what makes it so different? It took the original Street Fighter and one, it sped up the game. It I think it doubled the frame rate, but it made the game faster. 2, it changed what all the controls had to do. Market hack of the game. But what happened was Street Fighter released Super Street Fighter, which had more characters. Now, Super Street Fighter just so happened to come out about the same time that this hack came out. So Super Street Fighter was Street Fighter with more characters. Street Fighter Rainbow was Street Fighter with the same amount of characters, but way faster and way more fun. So Capcom started losing money. Now, the problem is nobody knows who made the Rainbow Edition originally. Somebody made it and then told his friend how to make it, that told his friend how to make it. Next thing you know, there was like a bunch of people who knew how to make it, and they started selling it. So Capcom couldn't sue one person, so instead they released a giant ban on the game. And that's how they kept it out of the arcades. And interestingly enough about it, which is the most popular Street Fighter, which is Street Fighter Hyper Fighting, came out relatively like 3 to 6 months, I think, after Rainbow Edition came out, and Hyper Fighting sped up the gameplay. Because basically, once they took Rainbow out of the arcades, people had to go to Super Street Fighter, and they realized that it was just slow and boring, and you can't go from playing these fast-paced games to going to just Hadouken, and it kind of goes across the screen. You know, when you're used to playing at that kind of speed. So Hyper Street Fighter is undeniably a result of this hack. Now, the most important game ever for hacking